Welcome back to TerraPulseNews. Today we're diving into one of the most urgent and complex challenges facing the world in 2025, climate migration. As extreme weather events increase and ecosystems degrade, millions of people are being forced from their homes. This phenomenon is creating what many experts warn could be the largest refugee crisis of our time, not caused by war or persecution, but by climate change. In this video, we'll explore what climate migration means, why it's happening now at an unprecedented scale, the regions most affected, and the political, economic, and humanitarian challenges that lie ahead. We'll also look at how governments and international organizations are responding, and what still needs to be done. Climate migration refers to the movement of people who are compelled to leave their homes because of sudden or gradual changes in their local environment. This includes extreme weather events such as hurricanes, floods, droughts, and wildfires, as well as long-term changes like desertification, sea level rise, and soil degradation. Unlike traditional refugees, climate migrants often do not fall under international legal protection because, well, the 1951 Refugee Convention does not recognize environmental factors as grounds for asylum. This legal gap complicates responses to their growing needs. Estimates vary, but the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center reports that in 2024 alone, nearly 35 million people were displaced by climate-related disasters worldwide. The World Bank predicts that by 2050, climate change could force over 200 million people to migrate within their own countries or across borders. This is not just a future problem. It is happening now. Several environmental factors are driving climate migration today. Sea level rise is putting coastal communities worldwide at risk of inundation. Low-lying island nations like the Maldives and Kiribati are facing existential threats, with some already, planning mass evacuations. Extreme weather events like hurricanes and typhoons are becoming more intense and frequent because of warmer oceans. The destruction of homes and infrastructure forces displacement, and sometimes it's permanent. Drought and desertification, especially in regions such as the Sahel in Africa and parts of Central Asia, have led to prolonged droughts that make agriculture impossible. This, unfortunately, destroys livelihoods and food security, pushing rural populations towards cities or even other countries. Flooding. Increased rainfall and melting glaciers cause riverine floods. Bangladesh and parts of Southeast Asia are among the hardest hit, where millions face repeated displacement. Wildfires. Hotter, drier conditions fuel wildfires in places like California, Australia, and the Mediterranean, forcing evacuation and long-term migration. Africa, the Sahel and Horn of Africa. The Sahel region, spanning from Senegal to Sudan, is one of the most climate-vulnerable areas on Earth. Decades of desertification and erratic rainfall have turned once fertile land into barren terrain. Pastoralist and farming communities struggle to sustain themselves. In countries like Niger, Mali, and Chad, this environmental pressure fuels not only migration, but also conflict, as scarce resources become contested. Millions have moved towards cities or crossed borders seeking safety and work. Similarly, the Horn of Africa, including Ethiopia, Somalia, and Kenya, faces recurring droughts and food crises. The United Nations estimates that over 20 million people in this region require humanitarian aid, partly due to climate stress. Asia, Bangladesh, and Southeast Asia. Bangladesh is a striking example of climate vulnerability, with a large portion of its population living in low-lying floodplains. Seasonal cyclones, flooding, and rising sea levels regularly displace millions. These internal displacements often turn permanent as homes and farmland are lost. In Southeast Asia, countries like the Philippines and Vietnam face a double threat: typhoons and rising seas. The Mekong Delta, vital for rice production, is experiencing saltwater intrusion, making farming unsustainable. Many Pacific Island nations face the risk of disappearing under rising seas. Countries like Tuvalu and the Marshall Islands are already working with the international community on relocation plans. This situation raises complex questions about sovereignty, identity, and international law. In Central America, prolonged droughts and hurricanes have devastated agricultural regions, pushing thousands toward migration routes to the United States. These climate pressures combine with economic hardship and violence, creating what is often called the triple threat. In the United States, climate migration is increasingly visible, especially after catastrophic hurricanes like Katrina and Ida, as well as wildfires in the West. Internal displacement within the country highlights how climate impacts are not limited to poorer nations. Climate migration presents unique challenges. Legal protection. Unlike refugees fleeing war, climate migrants lack clear international legal protections. This leaves many without rights or access to aid. So, resource competition. When you have large influxes of migrants, it can really put a strain on urban infrastructure, jobs, and social services. Sometimes this leads to tensions between migrants and the host communities. Security risks are another big concern. In fragile regions, climate displacement can actually make conflicts over land and resources worse, creating these ongoing cycles of violence. And, the economic impact is significant too. Migrants often have to leave behind their livelihoods and assets, while host regions end up bearing the costs for integration and social support. So, when communities are forced to relocate, it's not just about moving homes. The loss of ancestral land really means losing a deep sense of cultural heritage and identity. The global community, well, it's actually starting to respond to these challenges now. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC, now includes migration as part of its adaptation frameworks. And some countries have begun to recognize climate migrants in their asylum policies, though honestly this is still far from being universal. Regional agreements such as the Nairobi Declaration in East Africa promote cooperation on displacement issues. NGOs and humanitarian agencies focus on early warning systems and resilience building to prevent displacement. There is growing advocacy for a global compact on climate migration which would fill legal gaps. Experts agree that addressing climate migration requires a multifaceted approach. So, mitigation. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions remains the most urgent priority to limit future displacement. Adaptation. Investing in infrastructure, water management, and climate-resilient agriculture can really help communities stay in place. Legal frameworks. International law must evolve to recognize and protect climate migrants. Wealthier countries must, increase support for vulnerable regions to build resilience. Planned relocation. For some communities, safe and dignified relocation will be necessary, with respect for rights and culture. Climate migration is no longer a distant threat. It is a reality unfolding before our eyes. It challenges our existing political, legal, and humanitarian systems, forcing us to rethink how we protect the most vulnerable. At TerraPulseNews, we will continue to track this critical issue with in-depth analysis and reporting. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell us in the comments, what region's climate migration crisis concerns you the most? What solutions do you think are essential? Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay engaged.